What's up? It's Spike again. Gears of War 2 has been out for a couple weeks now, and I'm still constantly running into people who have just gotten the game and don't know their way around yet. So I've decided to share some of the most effective strategies for the game's most popular mode, Horde. Those that have been playing this since it came out may or may not find this info kind of obvious. This video will share little tricks you can use to keep the Horde at bay, as well as several of the best spots to hold off. So let's start with the most common defense spot, as it's the most popular map in Gears 2, River. There are two large houses on this map. You'll want to hide in the one with the flat roof, not the pointed roof, as this one barely has any ceiling over it. This makes it easier to fire a mortar through the ceiling. When the game starts, have one person run to the middle of the bridge to pick up the mortar, have another person run under the bridge to pick up the boom shot. Someone else will want to run into the small house at the end of the road to pick up what's in there, and everybody else needs to get into the flat-roofed house quickly to prevent the enemy from spawning in there. Once you pick up your weapon, especially with the guy who went to pick up the mortar since he moves so slow, you'll want to hurry back to the house because the enemies will have started to spawn as you're picking up the weapon. If you walk up the ramp in the house to the balcony, you'll either find a torque bow or a sniper rifle. This spawn trades off between the two weapons every wave or so. I'm not very good with the torque bow, however you do want somebody using it, as it can take out a boomer in one headshot, while a sniper rifle can't do that. That's another thing. Ammo is scarce in Horde, so whatever you do, don't use the sniper rifle against the large enemies. Don't try to headshot Cantus priests, butchers, boomers, maulers, or grinders. You'll end up wasting most of your ammo before you kill them. You shouldn't snipe smaller enemies either, such as wretches or tickers, as they can easily be dealt with without expending any ammo. Use the sniper rifle for mid-range enemies, such as drones, snipers, and therons. So, once you're all in the house, you'll want at least two people downstairs at the doorway defending with their lancers or shotguns or hammer bursts or whatever they want. You'll want two people up in the balcony using the sniper rifle, torque bow, or mortar to pick off the enemies at long range. And if you have a fifth person, put him on the ramp up to the balcony, crouching behind the left-hand pillar. If a locust gets inside, then the snipers need to pull out their lancers or hammer bursts and fire down on them to help the other guys out. Once you get to wave 8, you'll start fighting maulers. These are the enemies who swing maces and hold the boom shields. When you kill one of these, be sure to pick up their shield quickly before they disappear. Once you have two shields, you can plant them at the doorway. However, you have to plant them backwards, because that way the enemies won't be able to kick them down. This means that you can't just use the shield to protect yourself as you're planting it. The solution to this is to have one of the guys in the building go out and hide behind the sandbags just outside the door, and give you cover fire while you plant the shields. Plant one on the left and one on the right, and make sure that you leave a small amount of room on one side so you can get back in. However, don't make it too big, as the enemies will get in as well. If you do this correctly, then it will be impossible for any of the big enemies like boomers or grinders to get in. Small enemies will be able to get in, but you can just melee or chainsaw them. Mid-range enemies will sometimes be able to get in, but if you planted the shields right, this should be a rarity. And for the love of God, make sure you get the shields up before wave 10. On all the 10 waves, 10, 20, 30, etc., you'll get blood mounts. If these things get into the house, then it can be very hard to survive. Not only that, but sometimes the blood mounts can bust down the shields, so try to keep them as far away from the entrance as possible. Another difficulty with the shield strategy is that at the beginning of a wave, the shield will disappear if you don't pick it up. So at the end of a wave, when there are only 2 or 3 enemies left, have 2 people pick up the shields and keep them in their hands until about 30 seconds after the next wave starts. Then you can plant them down again. So that's basically all you need to know about River. Now let's move on to the next map, which is possibly the easiest to defend, Avalanche. There are 2 effective spots on this map. The first one is a small house at the opposite end of the map from the mountain. This spot has some serious weaknesses, so it will only work for the first 25 or 30 waves, before the enemies start getting really tough. This is a good spot because it's convenient. A boom shield spawns in the truck right next to the house. This means that you don't have to kill the maulers to get your shields. So put 2 at each entrance like you did on River, and get in by climbing in the windows. Then use the earlier waves to plant shields at some of the other choke points, like the stairs up from the courtyard or the entrance to the spawn building. The biggest weakness of this spot is the flame boomers. If they get close to you, then prepare to get raped. Mid-range enemies can easily climb in the window, but with so many people crammed into one small building, death by chainsaw for him is inevitable. As soon as this spot stops working for you, you can switch to the other side of the map. The balcony that has its back to the mountain is where you want to hide. Don't worry, the avalanche doesn't happen in Horde mode. If you can get your hands on the shield, then plant them at the bottom of the stairs, but the best thing about this spot is that they're not completely necessary. In the middle of this balcony, there's a weapon spawn that switches off between the mortar and the mulcher. The mortar is effective, but when the mulcher spawns, make sure everybody gets one. You want 2 people at each staircase and 1 in the middle if you have a 5th man. Of the 2 people on the stairs, you'll want 1 looking down the stairs and 1 on the wooden wall to the side with a mulcher. This is an excellent spot as you can mow down anyone in the spawn building. If you work together, then this is probably the easiest spot to fend off the Locust Horde. The next spot I want to talk about you should only use if you know your teammates know how to coordinate. This map is Blood Drive. This is the map with 2 staircases on either side. You'll want to hold off at the top of one of the staircases. At the beginning of a wave, have someone run halfway down the stairs and into the doorway. Pick up the grenades there and plant 1 on the doorway you just went through and 1 on the ground at the bottom of the stairs. At the top of the stairs there are 2 rooms. One of them is a short hallway with a pistol in it, and the other is a large room with a sniper window. Hold them off from the top and middle of the stairs, but make sure someone is always at the top, as enemies will start spawning in the large room if no one's around. When Wave 9 comes around, you'll want to kill a couple maulers and hold on to their shields. Then at the beginning of Wave 10, retreat to the large room and plant 2 shields at the entrance the same way you did on River and Avalanche. Then hold them off there, as it's impossible for anything bigger than a wretch to get in. The reason you'll want a tightly knit team is that if nobody's at the top of the stairs, then they'll start spawning behind you and fire down at you from the top. This can be very problematic and will result in many a failed wave. The final defense spot I want to talk about may seem like an obvious spot, but it's more complicated than it looks. This spot is on the map Security. This is a good map because there's already a hiding spot that's blocked off with something a little more deadly than shields. Lasers. Make sure that someone on your team knows where the external deactivation button is and have him run as fast as he possibly can to push it. Everyone else needs to be waiting at the area with 4 laser gates for the lasers to turn off. Once it's open, they need to rush in, and the man at the button needs to hurry back as fast as he can, because by the time he would have gotten to the button, the Locust will have started to spawn, and he only has just enough time to get back before the lasers close again. Once everyone's in, then there's a mortar/mulcher spawn behind the sandbags. There's a deactivation button inside, but only use it when absolutely necessary. You can see the external button from where you are, so you will need to make sure that you shoot any Locust making for the switch, as they will press it, and if you don't kill the guy over there, he will keep pressing it. When the lasers deactivate, then have 2 people on the middle entrance and 1 person on each of the side entrances until the lasers come back up. The biggest problem with this spot is the ammo. The mulcher and the mortar don't seem to spawn as frequently as they do on Avalanche, so at the beginning of each wave you need to go out to the courtyard and grab a box of ammo to keep your primary weapon full. And that's pretty much it. Just as a final warning, a huge mistake that so many people make is that when they see that there are only 5 enemies left, they leave the defensible spot to go out hunting. This is a very bad idea. Just because there are only 5 enemies left doesn't mean they're easily killed. You need to stay in your spot till the end of the wave. At the end of a wave, if you've forgotten to pick up your shield, make sure that you're at least close. That's the first thing you want to do at the beginning of each wave, is to reset your shields, otherwise they'll disappear. I hope this helped anyone who's having trouble with this immensely enjoyable mode. So get out there and rape some Locust.
Alright, hey guys, I gotta go, so I'm gonna kill myself on the laser, alright? Alright. There. Dude, the Locust just saved your life.